I wasn't going to postpone that closing for anything because we had been working on it for about 12 years. I'm an 11th generation farmer on this property. We can trace some of the ancestors back all the way to England, and they fled England. Well, I tell them, we're not just building for ourselves, we're building for the generations to come. Planning this facility to be usable and available for my kids, their kids. So everything's in transition.
Yeah.
We're just figuring things out. It's almost like a brand new farm because we don't know how things operate in this new temporary housing.
How are you really working with your kids to show them about farm life?
Okay.
So we are at a really cool place today. You are Terri and you are Nevin.
Yep.
And this is an 11th generation dairy farm in the heart of New England.
That's right.
Literally the heart of New
20
England.
miles from Boston. Yep.
And you are going through a big transition right now. So things look a little in transition.
Yes,
they just are in transition.
That's our word.
But let's walk this way and talk a little bit about who you are and what you're doing here today.
Yeah, so you said, I'm an 11th generation farmer on this property. We can trace some of the ancestors back all the way to England, and they fled England. They were intellectuals, people who wrote about the Bible, which became very unpopular. They needed a way to get out safe, right? So they came here to basically for their lives. One of the brothers went back and was put to death when he returned to England because of these ideas that were expressed by a relative of his. We met. I bought a trailer from him, and then my truck broke down, and so he fixed it, and then I had to fix it again.
And then the rest is history. You guys fell in love over a broken truck, and that's it.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's awesome.
Well, he was so good at fixing my truck, I figured I needed to get him on the team somehow.
If I can't hire him, I'll just marry him, and it'll be fine. I love it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your transition. So behind us, we've got, and there is noise. We are on a working dairy farm.
Right.
So like there's a bobcat. I guess it's not a bobcat, but there's a skid steer beside us.
Yep.
So we'll keep that.
Feed the cows.
Okay, so we'll keep that in mind. So we've got your trailers here. You've got it full of your things because you just tore down.
We just moved. We're like moving,
barns.
only it's times 10 because we're moving a farm. So
Right.
we moved everything out of the barns that the chicken barns my great grandfather built back in the 20s, so about 100 years old, but they're full of stuff. Like any farm is, when you transition between the same family, generally nothing's thrown out because it's all valuable. So we had to move it to here.
So you said you just bought this place from your parents. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we purchased the farm from our parents 5 years ago, and we had Asher 3 days later. I wasn't going to postpone that closing for anything because we had been working on it for about 12 years.
Wow.
2 years with the P&S, and then finally we were able to come to an agreement about, satisfying all their wishes.
What is a P&S?
Purchase and sale agreement. So that is in Massachusetts, you need that generally before you can proceed. It's basically an agreement to say that we're going to purchase them.
So you really needed like concrete stuff to purchase it from your parents.
Yeah, I needed to buy them a house. They had a whole list of things that I needed to do before I was allowed to purchase the farm.
Are you able to expand into why that was so difficult? Especially being an 11th generation farm.
Yeah, well, transitions are very difficult, and my parents are young. They had us when they were young. They didn't want to let go, right? When I was at Purdue, actually in my farm management class, we all talked about the businesses that we wanted to go into, and actually the cheese business and this retail business was actually part of my capstone business management program at Purdue. And I remember when we were talking with the class about this farm and my parents and how I could transition in, one of the professor's comments was that my parents were very young. They were very young for a transition plan. And they were. I think actually they didn't really get serious until my dad was diagnosed with cancer. And once that diagnosis happened, then there's this realization that we're not going to be able to do this forever. We're not going to live forever. Maybe we should be transferring things to the next generation. And fortunately, since I left Purdue, I had been working towards that transition. We had been doing some really smart business decisions, investing in real estate in the area that we knew that we would be able to transition into farm ownership.
So you've now bought it from them. You are going to build a brand new barn, and you're in a temporary barn. So
That's right.
You're in a shipping container for your temporary barn. Can we go
Yeah,
look at it now? Or I guess
absolutely.
he just went in there.
Yeah, he's putting hay in for the day.
Okay.
Well, at night, we bring them in at night because we have so many neighbors that we want to make sure that the cows are safe at night, so we keep them inside.
Okay, wait a minute. So you're not necessarily saying safe from predator, just saying safe from neighbors?
Safe from neighbors, yeah, they're
How
the
does
predators.
How does that work?
Well, in Massachusetts, the farmer is liable if my cow gets loose. I'm liable for any damage it does, like whether it's, the $200,000 manicured lawn that she happens to step into and chew a little bit of their shrubbery. I'm responsible for that. There's a lot of liability in Massachusetts. It's like the most litigious state in the country.
It's probably also worth mentioning, I guess, now that not only are you in the city has grown up around you,
Yeah.
but
we
so
were
much
here first.
Yeah, you were here first for sure. But I mean, like the Patriots Stadium is
Yeah,
like
they're
right
our
there.
neighbor.
Like we can see
Yep,
the
they're our
lights.
direct neighbor. Yep.
So your property touches the stadium. So
Yeah.
there probably is a lot of concern that your animals could get out, or do you have concern that people come on the farm?
Well, a little bit of both.
Okay,
Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, but
Okay.
we're just, they're big animals and people around here don't know what they are. Like my neighbor down the street, she came into the farm stand and she said, "Oh, I loved seeing your horses on the pasture." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then she says, "Well, how many horses do you have?" And I was like, "Well, none. I'm sorry." I didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
So people just don't know what a cow even looks like. So when you're that far away from the farm, there's a lot of responsibility with that, not just to educate people who are coming here to say, this is what a farm looks like, this is what a farm smells like, these are the things that we do, these are what cows look like. People just don't understand how animals work, and so we want to make sure that our neighbors are safe and that the cows are safe from their neighbors.
Yeah, okay. So why did you decide to go with shipping containers?
They're not taxed because it's temporary. Everything's temporary. But the biggest thing is with the shipping containers is we're always looking, one step ahead, whether it's next week, next month, next year. So once we're done with this shipping container, this is a self-contained milking unit, milk room that could go to Iowa, it could go to anywhere. It can just get loaded up onto a truck and be delivered anywhere and be fully functional for someone that wanted to milk cows or goats. And whether they were going to sell raw milk or going to make cheese with that milk, either way, it would be set up and ready to go for them.
That's awesome. I'm so excited to take a look.
Yeah.
Anytime I can get a chance to look at someone else's parlor, I do. I don't know why I'm so weird, but I love it.
Well, I don't know if we're fully cleaned up yet, but so we have this small bulk tank.
Oh, yeah.
We actually have the really old style with the funnel, and we pour the milk in. We weren't really sure that we could get approved for the pipeline because these are such innovative facilities that sometimes being the first person to do something isn't always the easiest. And we have a tight timeline where we really wanted to get going so that we could get our new building going. We have the robot coming in December, so we have a deadlines.
Yeah, and we didn't say that before. So your new building, your new milking parlor is going to be a robot milker.
That's right. Yep.
We'll unpack that later. But just in case somebody didn't understand what you meant when you said you got a robot coming.
Yeah.
Like, that's so cool. Okay, so we've got your bulk tank here.
Yep, we got our bulk tank,
Okay.
cools the milk good. We're using a bucket milker just like we did when we started milking back in the 80s with my parents in the World War II barracks. We were using 4 pails and a dumping station, and we're back to using the pails and the funnel and the filter in the bulk tank.
I don't think we said that on camera either. I think we talked too much off camera.
We'll have to do better next time.
No, that's my fault. So before you were milking in a World War II barracks.
Yeah, so when we purchased the farm, I actually, after the closing, I went and took pictures of everything because I'm like, this is going to be like memorable.
Yeah.
This is where we need to keep track of where we started because like everything was overgrown. There was really not much of anything of value. Like literally, like we were milking in a World War II military barracks that was Army surplus. My great grandfather brought it here in the 50s. It was free. You just had to pay for the trucking.
Wow.
And so my dad converted that in the 80s into the milking parlor. It was a little flat barn. They'd bring the cows in to milk 12 at a time. And he milked up to 50 cows doing that. So so you know,
Wow.
they were workers. I mean, it's just a totally different era when you think about like that kind of milking system versus the robotic milking system. I always compare that to like if you were to go to work in an office today where they were still running DOS on their computers. Now I say that and people don't even know what DOS is.
I have a very small memory.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and if you were to go to an office where they were like legitimately using computers from the 70s or 80s, you would run away. And so I've always been amazed that we were able to retain workers with this wicked outdated technology. And now we're actually like implementing this transition to the modern world where we're going to be using robots and computers and just trying to do as much as we can while maintaining the grass-fed cow herd, but at the same time implementing that modern technology.
Yeah. I love that. And I love that you took pictures too, because you're like, we're going to want to remember this. We need to remember this.
Oh, yeah.
So where are we going? Is this your parlor?
This is where we actually milk the cows. Daniel's just finishing up.
Okay.
So, yeah. So this is where we are milking the cows. We're doing 3 at a time.
Wow.
There's...
So they walk in there and then
they walk in through the exit.
This way.
That's like the original door with the container.
Okay.
So most of these doors we put in.
Yeah.
So they walk in. We have them trained now so that they stand here and get clipped in. Originally, we were milking them in a locking headlock situation, so it's a lot of learning for the cows. It's been a lot. And then this is where they spend the night. So
you built just like hoop house structure.
Yeah, we put the hoop
walls.
houses on top of the containers, super tall. So when we get into the bedded pack, when the bedded pack gets tall, no problem. It was like the cheapest, easiest thing that we could come up with.
Yeah.
For transition facility, that's what we wanted.
Yeah, I think it's great. And go ahead.
Oh, sorry. What we found is even though this is a transitional facility, it's way better than what we were milking in. Super easy. Everybody's happier. Everybody feels much lighter. I mean, it's so light and airy in here.
Yeah.
The breeze comes through because we got the fan. Like the old barn didn't have anything for stuff like that.
So it was
had
just
like
stuffy and hot and moist.
Concrete. The concrete was all broken up, so he'd like step in a big mud. Well, it wasn't mud.
Yeah, a big poop pile.
A big hole.
I love this too because, like you said, this is temporary. But honestly, if somebody was having some kind of homestead, this is a great idea. You've got shipping containers on 3 sides.
Yep.
You put your rails up top on there. You've got tarp. You've got wooden walls.
Yep.
And doors big enough to bring a tractor in, or at least a skid steer.
Yeah.
This is awesome. So you said your bedding pack comes up, so you just keep building it up.
Yeah.
And then after so long, you clear it
We'll
out.
see how it works. I mean, this is kind of like it's a transition, so we don't know for sure how long we're going to keep building it versus like when we're going to start turning it.
Yeah.
And it's just stuff.
Yeah.
You know, anytime you move, right, you have a certain level of tolerance for like, okay, we can deal with this like the way it is for now, but we're going to have to unpack that box and get this other stuff out.
So you talked about like the human aspect of going through the change, but how about the cows? Have the cows managed through that change okay?
The cows have been better than I thought. So I do have another farm that I'm working with that kept like my heifers and anyone that was a little bit high strung. Okay. But because I have young kids, we don't keep any cows that are kickers. We don't have anyone that's dangerous. For like if my 4-year-old, 5-year-old can't go and milk them, they're not here.
Yeah.
So I get $11 a pound for hamburger.
Right.
I don't have time for, life is way too short for a kicker or bad attitudes or, you know, so all of our cows are super easy to manage. We actually caught them, put halters on them and put them through that way with a halter first.
Wow, that's awesome. Can we go out?
Yeah, we can go that way.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, this is the way the cows would go out to pasture every day.
Okay. Do you do this? How long have you been operating this way?
1 week.
1 week.
2 weeks.
Holy crap! I thought I could smell cedar, but that's why.
Yeah,
I can smell cedar because this is brand new.
Everything's shiny and new. Right?
Wow. Okay.
So the cows are at the point now where they come in on their own, stand there,
but it's only been a week. How
That's
often
right.
are you milking them? Twice a day or just once a day?
Yeah, twice a day.
Twice a day. Okay, so out here, how many cows do you have?
Milking 18.
You're milking
right,
18 cows. Okay. And then you've got those that are just freshened, which I'm guessing these are it?
These are actually my nurse cows.
Okay.
So these cows right here all have, well, actually pretty much everything in this pasture is going to go for beef within the next year, the mothers and the calves. So these are all bull calves. I mean, I have some that if someone wanted a breeding bull, like that guy right there, he'd be pretty valuable for something like that.
The brown one looking at us?
The one scratching himself, yeah, hiding behind that other cow.
Oh, okay, the other one. The one
Yeah, I
standing
mean,
up.
so he's like potentially homozygous polled and, you know, genetically rare because I don't do the things that everybody else is doing.
What do you mean?
Well, like for example, in the Ayrshire breed, which is a heritage breed, right? So right there, how many people have Ayrshire cows, right?
That's
and
true.
only
Not a lot of
Ayrshire
people do.
cows, right? So, but even within that breed of Ayrshire cows, like there's like one bull, his name was Burdett, great bull, tremendous bull. Everybody used him, and I did too. But the bulls that I'm keeping don't have any Burdett behind them, so that my bull can be used on any cow in the breed. They're just genetically different.
Okay. Yeah, so it's not like you're inbreeding or line breeding, depending on the way you look at it.
Well, if you're line breeding within your own herd and you don't do what everybody else is doing, then it's still genetically different for the whole population.
Right. Street. This is an 11 generation farm.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it's gone through a change every single generation. Then
Well,
from chickens, your dad had dairy cattle. You are doing different things with your dairy cattle. Talk a little bit about like how it's changed over the last 11 generations.
There was always cows here up until milking cows until probably 62, and then some regulations changed with the pasteurized milk ordinance. They were required to probably put in mechanical refrigeration, and there wasn't really room in the barn that they were using. That's still our farm stand now. So they stopped milking cows rather than adapt to the new requirements.
When did your parents start milking again then?
My parents started milking again in 1988.
So it took about 20 years. A little more than 20 years.
But it's a big generational change.
Yeah.
You know, so that was my grandfather milking Guernseys, you know, that were left over from his 4-H project or whatever, his herd back in the 30s. Then there was Holsteins here. There was like a Jersey bull steer. I don't know how long that Jersey steer was here for, like ever. He's just a pet. I don't know. And then we had Sprite, the Jersey cow, who we used to milk in a headlock. That was like me and my sister's job. She was 9, I was 5.
Okay.
I was more of an annoyance than help, but she had to take me with her.
So you grew up milking cows?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have called it that way, but yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I mean, milking one cow isn't really milking cows.
Yeah, but I mean, in a way, you're still milking a cow, right? So
I wasn't doing it. She was doing it.
You were just bothering her?
Yes.
Your parents were milking, and then that was from the 80s, you said 12 years ago. So for about 30 years, they were milking, and then you came in saying, I want to take over.
Well, actually, I wanted to take over the farm since I was like 8, since they first started milking cows. Even before they started milking cows, my dad was raising heifers, and I would like go hang out and like sit on a rock and draw pictures of the cows, like as a little kid. So I knew even back then that I wanted to farm. So the question more was like, would I go to college? Would I go to get a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree? How that all would work. And my parents told me I had to go to college. They wanted me to work for someone else for at least a year.
But what was it really that made you decide that you want to change the infrastructure so drastically? Yeah.
Well, I wanted to change the infrastructure. Well, I didn't necessarily want to change the infrastructure, but when we finally transitioned, when we were able to obtain ownership and control, really, it was about control, because I didn't want to keep investing in facilities that I knew would be split between me and my 2 sisters. Once I had control through ownership, we basically did a general business assessment, but the buildings were not structurally sound at that point. I mean, the price of milk was very low at times. Maintenance got deferred. You know, it's always interesting when they say, oh, well, prices are low, but dairy farms are still profitable. And you're like, dairy farms they're not losing money. And you're like, the only reason why they're not losing money is because they're deferring maintenance and deferring costs that they should be taking care of. I always find it a little bit frustrating when we analyze dairy farms, and especially because, like, for example, in Massachusetts, anyone who's deriving their income from the milk market is not able to put the money into their facilities like they should. So they have a lot of deferred maintenance, roofs, painting, all the things that we're supposed to do as good property managers we're not able to do because the price is so low, because Americans want cheap food.
Yeah. Has this farm always had raw milk?
I started selling raw milk again in 2006.
Why? Why did you switch from pasteurized to raw?
Well, we didn't switch from pasteurized milk to raw. I started doing it because I thought it might be a good way to get involved with the farm and earn some extra income, pay off my student loans.
So you're just saying instead of selling it to a bulk truck pickup, you were selling it off farm as raw?
They were selling it. So we had the milk truck coming here until 2011. We started making cheese. We were fully licensed to make cheese in 2009, and 2006 is when we started selling raw milk. Then 2011 is when we stopped shipping milk. A lot of farms need that buffer for the financial protection, especially. Anytime you're starting a new venture, but especially with cheese making and stuff, you need time to build a market, unless you have like an extensive marketing budget, which most farms don't have.
Right.
It's very important for farms to be able to utilize some of their milk outside of their contract in order to transition into a self-sustainable model.
Yeah. Like you said, the market was the way it was, and money wasn't able to be put back in infrastructure.
Yeah, everything was falling down.
So that's where you're at right now.
Right.
So tell me a little bit then about how you're marketing your raw milk. There's always controversy out there about raw milk. I personally am a huge advocate for raw milk. Love it, love it, love it. So talk to me a little bit about from the dairyman side.
Well, I hardly can speak from just the dairyman side because I actually used to work for the state as an inspector on dairy farms.
Okay.
But with that kind of frame of reference, my goal is to provide raw milk to the market as clean as possible. And that isn't an easy thing. There's a lot that goes into it. So it's a multifaceted issue. There's a lot of farms that sell raw milk that I probably wouldn't drink their raw milk.
I've run across the same thing, unfortunately.
So that's one of the things that they expect the consumer to, that's one of the reasons why in Massachusetts they want it to be on-farm sales, because they expect that the consumer can go on the farm and evaluate whether this is a place that they would trust to get raw milk from. I don't know that that's necessarily something that the consumer is always able to evaluate. And I've had people come to the farm stand and say, does the FDA say that I can feed this to my child? And I say, no. The FDA says you should never feed this to children, and in fact the FDA says you shouldn't drink it either. And I'm okay with not making that sale, because if someone has that kind of question, I don't really feel like they're our customer. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I totally agree.
And I would never want anyone to consume a product that they feel uncomfortable with.
Right.
But at the same time, I feel like people should have access to a product that they really, really want, to the extent that I've had people drive an hour every week to get that half gallon of raw milk. Yeah. And those people should be able to have access, whether it's at their, whether it's a home delivery route or what. But those are the people who, it doesn't matter if it's an hour, 2 hours, whatever. They're gonna pursue the product because they 100% believe that it's better for them.
How does it work with your customer base where the city has literally grown around you? I mean, how many acres do you have here?
25.
25 acres. That's not a lot. It's a lot in a city.
Yeah.
And I mean, you've got people out here who think that these animals are cows.
Horses.
Horses, yeah. They think that these cows are horses.
Right. They don't know the difference.
How does that work with your customer base?
That's one of the things that I thought about when I was at Purdue in my farm management class is, what are our strengths? What are our assets being here surrounded by people? I mean, I have McDonald's on one end of the street and Dunkin' Donuts on the other end of the street.
And a giant football stadium at the corner.
A giant football stadium there, yeah. And which actually we get a lot of athletes that come to the farm stand. You'd be amazed.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I bet they do.
Well, especially because we get these Midwest farm boys that come. Yeah.
You need those corn-fed boys. They need some extra calories. They
know the good meat and the good milk. They know that they need, how good it is, and they need it. So my customers, the best thing about my customers, especially the raw milk. Raw milk is my biggest seller. And the thing about them is they're educated. They are learning about their food. They're learning about how people make food, and they are voting with their dollars, and they're driving here from long distance. Ultimately, we're trying to integrate that high customer pressure into our business plan so that in our new building, we're going to have a viewing area where people come in and see the cow get milked on the robot and see that she's getting hooked up and get in there and getting milked for 5-10 minutes and leaving. And so that when someone comes along and says, cows are milked for 24 hours a day, that people can say, no, actually I went to the farm and saw how it's actually done. Obviously has some sort of weird agenda attached to that. So we'll go to the farmer and ask her
Yeah.
what she said, what the true story is. And that is probably like our biggest goal with our new facility, is being able to be that link for between consumers and producers, not just ourselves, but to be able to tell the whole story of agriculture, and that like, hey, look, there's no, milk is nutritious. It's got tons of great nutrients available, regardless of whether you buy it at my farm, the farm not down the street, but the county over, or whether you're buying from the grocery store. America's producing the safest food available in the world.
So can you talk me through a little bit of like your pasture management, what really they're eating? I mean, they're eating grass, right? And I assume you're feeding hay as well.
Yeah, I feed hay.
Do you have any other supplements or things that you feed them?
We feed them mineral and salt, but I give them alfalfa pellets in the parlor. We used to do oats, but I found that after I found the alfalfa pellets, I thought, hey, that's grass technically. That seems to be a little bit more palatable for my customers who want like the 100% grass fed. And you're like, well, if it's only 2% oats, is that okay? And they're like, no, okay, whatever.
Okay.
So, I mean, the science is not always as essential for people as a guarantee. Yeah, because like when I took my ruminant nutrition and physiology class at Purdue, like, we studied so much about, the high level biochemistry that's going on inside the gut, and like how to maximize production and how to maximize a level of nutrition for a cow. And there is that technology out there. And like I have cows in this herd that could milk 27,000 pounds or more per year if they were fed that way. But we don't feed that way, so we're getting more like 13,000 pounds for those top producers.
Yeah.
And I always like to say, that we're milking like it's 1960.
Yeah.
Because our feeding program is very similar to how that was. It's not for everybody, and sometimes I miss those bragging rates of being like, yeah, well, my cow made 200,000 pounds in her lifetime, so there.
Right.
But whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't talk about it that
But
way
now
anymore.
you can say, well, my farm is making like $2 million.
Not quite.
Not quite. I just threw that number out there. That's not a real number. That was just out of my butt. Once your cows have babies, how long do you let them nurse for? Just for the 24 hours, or do you give them longer?
It kind of depends on the cow and what's going on with her. Like if
Okay.
I know she's going to be a beef cow, like a cow that I'm not going to breed back, maybe she's older, maybe she has a bad foot, maybe she's had some breeding issues in the past, then that's going to be a cow that I might leave the calf on her and just put her out with my nurse cows. And she would be letting any calf nurse off of her, because that's how dairy cows do.
Yeah. So that's what that pin is up front. That's your nurse cows.
Yeah,
Okay.
yep, my nurse cows and calves. So the veal, I can't tell you how many times I've been accosted, either at farmers markets or in the farm stands, by the words, I know what you farmers do. I'm like, oh my gosh, you do? Please tell me. Which is great to get into a really good conversation. And some people are open, and some people will never, ever, ever believe anything you say.
Yeah.
Or they'll believe what you say and say, well, okay, I believe you treat your animals good, but no one else.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I really nailed it that time either.
So about the veal calves. So
Yeah.
talk me through what you do with that. Like if you're talking to somebody who knows nothing about what a veal calf is.
Well, strangely, everybody knows about veal calves, because in the 70s there was this huge campaign to tell people about how bad veal was. We raise our veal, they call it rose veal. It's loose on the pasture with cows that nurse, and it took me a long time to kind of figure out how to do it, because there is a steep learning curve. And I'll tell you what, the first time I did it, I followed the directions of a university that had put out directions on what to do, and I never had the worst looking calves in my life. Oh, it was embarrassing.
Really?
Oh, it was horrible. I figured out, so what happens is there's always one dominant calf, sometimes two.
Which makes sense, they're herd animals.
They're herd animals, and they're indiscriminate nursers, so one calf is going to get almost all the milk, and the others are going to get just the leftovers. Even if you have the right ratios, you could have 4 cows and 4 calves, and it's still going to be that way. So I kind of figured out how to manage that. I think we're doing pretty good with it right now. So I like to get my calves to be about 500 pounds, and I get about a 50% yield. And first generation Americans love the veal. They say, oh, it's just like at home. Thank you.
So when you say you get the calves to 500 pounds, I think a lot of people have veal in their mind that it's a newborn calf.
That's right.
A 500-pound calf is not
Nope. It's
a newborn calf.
No, and it's big enough to kill you.
Yeah. I mean, that is like, you don't even have one in here that's 500 pounds, do you? Well, you did.
Not quite. We just went to the butcher's last week. Yeah,
Okay.
those two are close. They're
Yeah.
probably 425, 450.
Okay, which they're laying down, so I won't show them because
Yeah.
they look smaller while they're laying down. But a 500-pound calf is a pretty good sized calf.
Yeah.
Or
Yep.
animal. So that's interesting. So how do you sell the veal calf then? Do you just sell it, like, do you take it to the butcher and then you sell it as veal calf?
I bring the veal calf to the butcher. They cut it, pack it, and send it back to me with the USDA label on it. In Massachusetts, we don't really have any state inspected slaughterhouse facilities, so the only option we have is USDA inspected facilities. So for me to sell veal or any meat, I have to bring it to the USDA inspected slaughterhouse. So I bring it there, drop off the live animal. 3 weeks later-ish, they call me and I pick up the steaks. I tell them how to cut it. Sometimes they do it, sometimes they don't. You know.
Yeah.
Either way, it's cut and wrapped. And
then you do the same process with your old cows that you probably do sell them with steaks too, don't you? And roast, or do they just do a hamburger?
Like,
because I have heard that the best beef out there is an old dairy cow.
I would agree with that as long as she's properly conditioned.
Okay.
Okay. So if you get a thin old dairy cow, no, you're not going to want, that's a grinder. You know, you're going to want a ground. You can make hot dogs, meatballs, I don't know, whatever, stuff like that. And if she's thin, you can't even really get the tenderloin because sometimes it's just like a pancake. You know, it's like too thin to really even make a steak.
Yeah.
We put the cows out here with the calves. They're gaining weight, going through their natural lactation cycle. They're not getting bred. They're going to gain weight as they come out from their parturition date. Theoretically, when they're at the nice fat level, then I'll have a butcher date available and we'll bring them right down with some calves.
Are
and then
you
we
doing
turn
that
in a burger.
often? Because you don't have like
Once a
a
month.
500-pound or a 500 head herd.
No.
So you're just doing it once a month.
Yeah, once a month we do it. Like this group, I'm like, I might switch it around as some young stock at a different farm now for our transitions, because I might bring a young heifer that I don't really like, and she gave me a dirty look. And one of these guys, I don't know, like that one I said could be a breeding bull. I might keep them around a little bit longer and see if anyone wants them.
I too have gotten some of those, that just like, I don't know how I feel about eating a calf, but I didn't realize really how old they were.
Right.
When
Yeah, usually
to be
they're like
considered
6 months
veal.
old.
Yeah, like 6 months old. That's a good sized calf.
And I'll tell you, at open houses and stuff, when the topic comes up, a lot of times I'll say something like, well, none of us get out of here alive. You know, if I have to go, would I rather have a quick painless death at a butcher shop or get sick?
Yeah, a
and
long drawn
struggle
out.
And
Yeah.
I don't know, which is a complex question. But, all the slaughterhouses are inspected for animal welfare. If they don't kill that animal with the first shot, they lose their license.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like anyone's fooling around in there. This
Right.
is deadly serious business. If you lose your license, that's a big deal. You have 14 animals to kill today or 40.
Right.
You can't afford that.
Right. I want to talk through a little bit more about continuing your transition.
Yeah.
I didn't realize just how new into transition you were when we got here. So I mean, like, you are just starting. What does like the future look like for you?
The future. Oh, gosh. One of the things that I've been taught, you say like the beginning, and it's like, no, this is been a huge project. We've been meeting with architects and engineers and government officials, because some of it's NRCS funded for like the environmental protection piece. When I meet with these people, I tell them, we're not just building for ourselves, we're building for the generations to come. Planning this facility to be usable and available for my kids, their kids, their kids. I have 4 little boys that love the farm. I have been very consciously teaching them about the farm, and not just about how to do things, but how to enjoy life being a farmer. It's not about the long hours, it's about flexibility, so I can go to their school programs and I work until midnight that night. But there's time for us, for the family, and that's the most important thing. And it's been something that we emphasize with all of our employees, is that family is first. So if you need to take the day off to take your mom to the doctor's appointment, do. Just let us know, just give us enough notice so that we can plan.
Yeah.
One of the things that's part of our being a preferred employer in the community is that we can offer the kind of flexibility and values that other businesses just can't do.
And what a staple you can kind of be too in a place that's so, it's not even urban here, is it? I mean,
It is.
Is it urban? Okay.
Yeah, it's a bedroom community for Boston and Province.
Okay, so that's in a community that's so urban where you can not only teach people about, you know, work versus family life balance, but also about agricultural like life.
That's right.
And agricultural jobs and
Yeah.
work and just how nature works and
That's right.
systems in nature and in agriculture and how your food works and
Yeah.
all of that. You can really
Yep.
really be a mainstay for people
Yeah.
around here. And you've been here for 11 generations and you really want that to keep going.
Right.
How are you really working with your kids to show them about farm life? Like, and about the importance of being a generational farm? Because I imagine it's easy for you to worry about them not wanting to farm and this going to be houses or something.
Yeah. Well, honestly, so, you know, the first thing that comes to mind when I think about our kids and our business and what we're doing here is, you know, God has to be number one. You know, when God is number one, everything else seems to fall into place. And if my kids decide to do something else, that's okay. You know, as long as they realize that, you know, God is the most important thing in their life. And that, with that being said, like, I can't imagine that the kids aren't going to come back just by the way that they act and feel about the farm right now. And I think that maybe feeling is the important thing. I'm not sure. There's a lot to it.
There is. It's definitely a depth kind of question.
Yeah. And I think too, I mean, going to school for agriculture was a big deal for me. Like, it really taught me a lot. Working at I worked on a ranch, a 500 head commercial cow-calf ranch for a long time, and I treated calves, like during their calving season. I was doing like 10 IVs a day and, you know, just really intensely doing something that I had never done before. But even to this day, I bring those skills with me. And like I said, my work at Purdue, you know, I finished my bachelor's in agriculture there as a double major in ag communications and animal agribusiness. And my capstone class for my agribusiness major, I developed a business plan to come back to the farm and start making cheese. And I had no idea about the raw milk thing at that time. I didn't even know it was popular or a thing. And, you know, so I used that, having that, I don't know, kind of like the ivory tower, but like that environment where you have a bunch of people who are really smart who can evaluate your plan and be like, hey, did you think about this? Or hey, did you think about that? Or whatnot. That was super helpful as well.
Yeah.
So even if it's like a short course or a 2-year college, I really feel like those universities were set up to help people learn how to farm better. We should use them.
Yeah, I love that. And I love what you're doing here. And I think it is amazing, your location and how long you have been here. I mean, I can't imagine how many times somebody in a suit has knocked on that front door and said, I'll give you a blank check for this area. And your family is like, no, we want it to be a farm. I love that. I see it. It's gonna be here for a long time further. That didn't even make sense. I don't know what my brain is doing right now.
Many generations to come.
Yes, it will be here for many generations to come. And I really want to come back once you've got the new setup up and running. I think that will be so cool to see. So we might just make a special trip just for you to come and see that.
Oh, well, plus you can go back to Normandy in the winter. That's the best time. The campground with the RV.
Yeah. Thank you so much for showing me around and talking to me about what you're doing here. It's so cool from a production level, but also, I mean, your barn is, that could be used on so many different applications too.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, we call it temporary, but after doing this, even for just a week, I'm like, this is so much better than what we had. We could do this for like 5 years, no problem. 10 years, you could do that. And I haven't calculated the cost yet, but it's less than the steel building.
Right. Well, thank you, Terri. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Okay, so I probably haven't really expressed this on camera much, but I have a very deep love for dairy farms. I used to breed cattle for local farmers when we were still in Indiana, and I don't know, there's just something about a dairy farm. I love it. So being here just has got me so energized. I love being around dairy cattle and just on a dairy farm. But I think even more so what she's doing here, what they're doing here is so cool. Not just from an agricultural standpoint, but the fact that they've been here for 11 generations. That's a long time. They can trace their family back from when they came over from England. I mean, it's breathtaking, honestly. And she's still pushing through. The barn, I think the barn could be used for anybody. So I know that when we farm again one day, those barn designs probably something we're gonna take, because I mean, it looks nice, it's easy, it's stable. Thank you for coming along with me on this tour today.